ready to go. Number one, discussion of the repair to replace roof at City Hall Civic Center. Thank you guys for waiting. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Council. Just kind of walk you through kind of the history of this, because many of y'all have been very involved, and talk about a little background, what we came up with options for the building roof replacement, the initial project plan specifications, the bid process, code compliance and addendums, and the resultant bid for roof replacement. If you'll recall, in advance of the 2023 budget, we engaged an A&M firm to look at the roof system and provide options and recommendations. And we, part of that process was a thorough moisture survey of the roof and of the entire field. Just to kind of remind you of the heated and cooled space in this complex, there's almost 48,000 square feet of roof over the heated and cooled, which includes the USA campus, the Civic Center, this building, as well as all the administrative offices of the city. And there's almost 12,000 square feet of gravel roof over the canopy that lines the north side of this building. And they did provide reports, repair recommendations, and budget estimates. And probably this is a little hard to see, but this is the areas that their survey determined were completely compromised. This roof in the heating and cool space is literally 3 inches of gypsum, which is a cementitious wall type board sitting on the bar joist that then has a modified bituminous roof system on top of it. Gypsum is a wonderful material, but once it gets wet, it loses all of its qualities. And of the total roof system, about 42.5% of the entire field is considered to be in poor or unusable, maintainable shape. So they did provide us a recommendation, if you'll recall, that that their budget line was $1 million for a roof system, and they were around $200,000 on the A&E fees. And I think because of the numbers, I think when we put the number in the budget, I think we put a budget placeholder of $1.25 million. And then we came to you and had a discussion about that. And I think what we left the meeting with y'all is that it was hard to justify spending that amount of money on a complete roof replacement system, considering that the council's wisdom is that what are we going to do with this building going into the future, and that it may not be the best use of money. And you asked us to go back to the drawing board and see if we could come up with other options. Myself, as well as George Ladd, we made it our mission to meet with various roof contractors and pick their brains, as well as we met with roof system manufacturers. I will tell you, I will not claim that I'm an expert, but they call this a low slope roof system, which is code word for a flat roof. But I learned more about low slope roofs than I ever wanted to. And as a cost saving option, we decided to bring it in-house and design in-house, prepare the specifications and bidding and letting, and that's what we did. We had basically 3 key performance goals in this project, and that was one, warranty, which is a 5-year workmanship and a 15-year on material, and a couple of challenges. When this roof system was put in 1982, there wasn't a wind code in the building code, and we do have a wind code here, and the classification of this building requires a design for up to 160 miles an hour at a 3-second burst. And this building is in the fire district. I don't know if there was a fire district in 1982. So those were 2 non-negotiable items that the roof system replacement has to meet. Has to meet wind, has to meet fire. So what were the project details? With the degraded gypsum, it is saturated and is no longer has any integrity. Our proposal was to repair that roof decking area by taking out the gypsum, putting in what's called a B deck, which is a galvanized metal pan, building up with a polyiso insulation, which is a dense foam insulation, back to the original roof thickness. And then the heated and cooled areas would receive a GAF Everguard TPO, which is a thermoplastic polyolefin 60 millimeter membrane, a TPO roof is what you'll hear them call. With the canopy, a little bit easier since it's not an occupied space, it's not heated and cooled. It was just to clean, strip the gravel, install fan fold insulation and cap with the same TPO roof system. The work that we specified would include the installation of all flashings, curbing, walk pads, parapet wall treatments, and other appurtenances necessary to deliver a sealed roof envelope. Good news is we had probably the largest attendance at a pre-bid meeting that I've ever been at. I will tell you, we used the Del Champs room, which has a number 3 on that map you saw earlier, as a compromised roof. It had rained heavily the day before. There was a trash can in the back corner full of water with a drop falling in it about every 20 seconds, and it was very painful because every time you heard a drop, I think the bid went up $1. But we had quite a few roofing contractors, as well as we had representatives of 3 different roof manufacturers that were interested. The wind code compliance became challenging. The original system we specified had multiple options for attachment. Here's the problem. If the gypsum that we're keeping does not meet the wind code today, meaning that if you mechanically fasten to it, the system you put on it can't meet it, it led us to that we had to go to a fully adhered system, a glued system. So it is glued at every square inch across the surface. And we also, because there was other manufacturers of competing roof systems, pre-bid we had several requests for equivalencies, and we reviewed those. And before bid, we issued an approval of a GAF Everguard fleeceback TPO. That is the type that is dictated that it's 100% adhered, and that's what's required to meet the wind code, as well as a VersiWeld thermoplastic membrane, which is another TPO from a different company, and then Duralast, which is a PVC sheeting roof, which is also 60 mil. Learned a little something. Even though the PVC is a more expensive product, the rolls come in much greater widths, and one of the expenses of putting down a membrane roof system is every place you have a seam, they're physically welded together through heat and other actions like that to make it a homogeneous weld. And the fact that TPOs only come in 120 inches, that's a maximum. That means you have a seam every 10 feet that you're doing, where the PVC product, even though it's more expensive per square foot as material, you can get lengths as big as you can handle, up to 40-foot rolls, and thus you have less seams, so your labor cost goes down, which is one of those things you learn. And we ended up issuing 3 addendums during the process. The results of the bids is we had 5 responsive bidders, 3 different roof systems that all meet the 5-year workmanship warranty and the 15-year material and the fire and wind code. The low bid, believe it or not, was the PVC system, which is a more expensive roof per square foot, but because of the ability to apply it in larger rolls, apparently the labor cost is less. And that came in at, the base bid came in at $5,222,110. And then you have a note here, we asked for a schedule of values of the unit price for additional gypsum decking replacement. So why did we do that? Well, the moisture survey is almost a year old. We can only assume that they captured all of the saturated areas, but we can assume that that may have increased since a year ago. So we put a placeholder of an additional 15% of the area that was already identified as damage. The area that's identified in damage in the moisture survey is in the base bid. But if we have a square footage over that number, then we have a placeholder, and so the $32,554 is arbitrary, and hopefully we won't need to spend a penny of that, but that puts that there in case that the damage is larger than the area identified in the moisture survey. Do want to remind you that in this project there are no hard A&E costs. We did all of the design, specification, and letting in-house. Public Works will manage the project and conduct construction inspection in conjunction with the building department. And you can see a bid tab that you'll see if at the next meeting to decide on what you want, which route you want to go. I will say that the bidder is from Pelham, Alabama. I know there's been a lot of chagrin that we tend to only see local companies, but apparently this job did interest bidders from further away than just the Alabama Gulf Coast area. So I just wanted to kind of bring that into you. I will also tell you that when I don't know how the number in the budget ended up being what it is, but the placeholder that got left there was 300,000. I think what happened is we were targeting. We had a working number when we started this process that we thought that one of the roofers thought it was about a $450,000 to $500,000 job. And I think what happened, there was two budget lines. There was need to be a line for the construction of the roof, and there was also that $200,000 in A&E cost that was given to us by the vendor that had done the initial study of the roof system. I remember Kim and I did have a conversation. I said, well, no, we're doing it in-house. We don't need that money anymore. But the implication was that needed to go join the 300,000 and get to 500,000 and move forward. That didn't happen. I should have checked that. It lives over in the Civic Center budget, and I just assumed there was $500,000 budgeted. I think the number's actually 300,000. But you know, our target was to definitely get it away from 1.25 million, which I'm happy with that. But it's still somewhere in that 522 to 560,000 total range to replace the roof system. Any questions?
Council? Jack, I'll start with you.
Phenomenal job. Phenomenal job. I mean, I couldn't be more happy with that, what you just presented.
Well,
And
I know more about
sometimes
roofs than I ever
sometimes
wanted
it
to.
pays to wait and take another look. And we've got something on the agenda tonight that we took a look at, and probably not going to be able to whittle it down, but in this case, you did. And I'm thankful for that. And if there was a way to get it on the agenda tonight, I'd say let's vote on it tonight. But
I think we're within the parameters of the bid, so I think 2 weeks from now, night will be just fine.
Okay.
So,
I don't want them to change their mind.
well, no, we got them locked in for 30 days.
Okay.
So. Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great job on coming up with a much more palatable price. I still think, yeah, I think at 554, I think that fits in whatever plans we may have for the Civic Center. That's a much more tolerable Band-Aid to put on it. I just, I don't know what our time horizon may be to address this on a larger scale, but I think at 554, that feels a whole lot better than 1 1/4. So good job.
I guess realistically, that's a great job. Realistically, y'all ready to, welcome y'all all back to the council chambers for the next 5 years.
Actually, it was a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Was it?
Well, and it was a group effort. And I tell you, if you don't know this, George Ladd he is knowledgeable about how things are built, and he walked all over this roof with those contractors because I don't fit up that cubby hole real well. So it is a group effort, and it's been a learning process, but I think we got a good plan going forward.
Yeah, I kind of think the same thing. I mean, I'm happy that this number is a lot lower than it was, especially because it's, ultimately I don't want to say a patch job, but it's ultimately just a temporary until we figure out exactly what our long-term plans are. And so 500,000 is a lot of money, but it's a lot less than 1.2 million. But I do think this is sort of a prompt to us to say, all right, let's really figure out what the next step is, and then we got to figure out where to go from there.
Well, and the nice thing is we got the 5-year warranty is soup to nuts, meaning that if there's a leak, that contractor comes back and addresses that, and on the actual material, it's 15 years. So, that does buy us time and peace of mind.
Thank you, Richard.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 2 is a discussion of the Clock Corner project.
It's the Richard Johnson show tonight. I apologize in advance. Can you put up the graphics? Oh, thank you. And y'all have all been quite engaged in this process, but we did go out to bid, and I do want to make sure that there was multiple options. So this is more reflective of what the actual option is. If the architect would have had his desire, all the parking on Section Street would be eliminated, but just one parking space and that little non-parking space that was on the corner is is being eliminated, as well as one of the angled on Fairhope. But it is a really neat space that they put together. I know Mayor and several city council members have been involved in this process. Just a couple of reminders, as cost savings, the city is self-performing all of the electrical, and we're self-performing the irrigation, as well as we will do all the plantings, since that's something we're very competent and good at. So the contract that has opened is the hardscape project. But one of the things that we are getting that was a little beyond the initial scope is we ran into a drainage problem with the fact that water has to get from Section Street to Fairhope Avenue to actually get to the public drainage in that location. And it today doesn't get around the corner very well. And with these improvements, it really wouldn't get around the corner very well. So there was a requirement that we have some inlets that pick up on section and actually are piped under the corner and bubble up into the gutter line there a little further east on Fairhope Avenue. And that added a little cost, not a lot, but it was probably at least 10% of the project cost that you see as bid. I do think it's a really attractive use of the space. That's a personal opinion, and I know that many of you have had a lot of input on it. I will tell you on a side note, if you recall, y'all funded some downtown intersection improvements that we never really fully completed the engineering on, but that was still available to us. And as we are also looking at the opportunity to add pedestrian signals at this intersection, that we won't probably come back and talk to you once we get some what that looks like. I just think if we're going to be at this corner doing all this, that's one of those recommendations that's been out there. And for me, I drive through this intersection a couple of times, 3 times a day, and our pedestrians have sometimes a tough time navigating it, and they tend to step out when the light turns green, when they really should be waiting until it turns red. But I think pedestrian crossings and would help the function and safety of this intersection as well. But this is the project as it was let. We did receive the response from 3 bidders. I'm going to find my notes. And the low was RHD's company at $277,711 with the alternate one of $4,500 for a grand total of $282,211. Then the others was $390 and $316 respectively. And you'll be seeing that for action next meeting as well. And hopefully we'll give you an idea about what adding pedestrian signals to that intersection so we can budget for it in the coming year. So,
Did they throw out a time frame on that?
we got a pretty tight schedule on it, meaning that if y'all approve it in 2 weeks, generally from the time that we get the resolution back and contracts go out, get signed, bonds, all that stuff, that means construction would start about 30 days after that time, so somewhere in mid-June. And I think start to finish, I think we're 60 days on this project, so it's not a real long project. So, definitely open and running and planted and maintained by the time school starts back. So.
Council, any questions for Richard on this project?
I'm running out of superlatives tonight, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that everybody remembers how close this corner came to being a hotel.
Yeah, we've been through a lot, the fuel tanks and digging it up and all the soil testing and the re-soil testing and.
I think it's great.
And I can't take any credit here. It was I think
Christian
Jack
Freud's
was on the consulting committee, and Mayor, it's a beautiful project. I got the full fuel tanks out. That was my contribution to it, so.
That was pretty big
pretty
job.
big.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Richard, I
All right,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
All right, council, moving on. Item number 3 is committee updates. Jack?
See, Airport Authority meets tomorrow. We did have a power supply conference from the AMEA. The mayor's going to talk about that in her mayor comments at the council meeting tonight. Some good news on that front. I believe that's it for my committee reports right now.
All right. Jimmy?
I don't have any updates at this time.
Mr. Boone?
Nothing to report.
I'll just say briefly, I know that the Historic Preservation Committee, I think, met again, was it Friday, Hunter, of last week? And I think the last I saw was an email saying they were finalizing their draft ordinance for us for our review. So we should be expecting that, anticipating seeing that sometime soon. All right, that's the only one I had. So we will move on to department head updates. If you've got something on the agenda, go ahead and let's take care of that while you're up here. Richard?
All right, let's start with agenda item number 6. I think this is an easy one. We already had a surplus list approached. Our electric utility has been working hard. There's decommissioning a couple of substations, and we have to dispose of transformers and voltage regulators. And it's one of those stories that starts out with bad news, it gets better. The first response was a company wanted $12,000 to remove it. Second company said that they would do it at no cost, but they'd pay nothing. And at end of the week before last, Mr. Hartline got a response that they would purchase those 6 items for $13,500, but it was only offer was good for 20 days, and would not meet again until that 20 days expired. So we're asking politely to add 1 GE 416 kVA voltage regulator to the surplus list, 3 Siemens 416 kVA voltage regulators, 1 U.S. transformer CU windings, and 1 U.S. transformer ALCU windings. So I think I would prefer to get $13,500 as opposed to either paying or getting nothing. So that's the request there for item number 6.
Last one, that list.
Then I have item number 12. This is, as you may or may not know, the contractor abating asbestos is in the K1 Center working. Part of the process is that we have to get the final certification, which involves a series from our environmental company, which is Southern Earth Science, and they have to do air sampling inspections, and they price that out. They have to do a TEM air sample analysis, a letter and report of completion package, and their total estimate for that post abatement work is $12,450, and we're asking to amend the total contract. They did all the front-end documents for us for the inventory and inspection and quantification and bid docs, and this will be to do the closeout and get us completely abated, and we have to have that certification to move forward with the EDA portion of the project.
I guess my only question, and I mean, it doesn't seem like a large number, my only question would be that the additional services are more than, I guess, what the original bid was, is that just because of the certification?
No, what we asked of Southern Earth, could they put together us the specifications and go inventory and quantify the quantities, locations, and types of asbestos to be removed, and all of the things that the contractor has to meet to do that. So that was the $11,000.
And now this is to certify that it's.
This is to come back and basically they got to come in and test and say, yes, contractor,
what they said.
you met it, or
Okay.
no, you got to keep going back until you do. And the good news is they don't think they're going to have to do 10 of those tests, but that would be the maximum. So hopefully that it'll be a quantity, if they end up only doing 5 tests and they get what they need, then we're done there. So.
Got it. Thank you.
And just to kind of, if you're keeping score, We had really no clue what asbestos abatement was going to cost. We're going to be less than $100,000 start to finish. So if you remember, the actual contractor was 63, and we're looking at 2022, so we're $90,000, and we're going to have an asbestos-free building, which, considering there's 27,000 square feet in there, not including basement, I really expect it to be a lot more than that. So. And then number 13, and I know what you're thinking, Councilman Burrell, because I'm thinking it too. We're required to have an archaeologist present. Mayor asked what was the archaeologist doing, and I'll just frankly, they sit there every day. But we've ran through the last $10,000 that we got awarded. And Aaron and I sat down and looked at what we had left, and we saw, surely to God, if we can get another 25,000 added, we'll get to the end of this land disturbance part of the project. And not that it's our money in the long run, but remember, we are getting reimbursed 80 cents on the dollar on this. And I agree that we've had an archaeologist on scene since the start of construction, and not a single artifact has been found, and no one's holding their breath that there's going to be an artifact found. So, but we have to do it.
Have there at least been a couple of close calls where you're like, hey, you really need to come look at this, let's check this out, and it's an old Coke can?
We found a real cool electrical insulator that would probably go back to the first power lines in downtown Fairhope, but they're only looking for cultural related artifacts, and apparently our culture of our electrical department does not count. So,
Well, that's.
and then I have item 15, which we had a discussion about last week, and let me find my notes there. So our engineers did explore the question that Councilman Burrell asked, which was a very good question. Was there some options to downsize the pipes? And the answer to the question is that yes, the pipes can be downsized, and the system still work effectively. And I think they put on your screen some graphics that may or may not mean anything to you. But as you recall, if we just replace in-kind size to size, that cost was projected at $246,555.98. Value engineering option 1 is that we can replace the 2 longest runs with 24-inch pipe with the outfall remaining 30-inch. And I put the contractor's price differentiation between the size of the pipe. Bad news is the only material cost difference between a 24 and 30-inch is $12.44 a linear foot, but it is a savings. And by going to this option, and the little blue line sticking up in the boxes, that is stacking in the box. But the good news is all the water stays in the system. We get a little bit higher velocity going out the end. The pond can handle it. And that would be a cost savings of $11,231.28, which is 4% savings over the original CO, which would change the not to exceed amount to $235,224.70. Option 2, which is the first run is changed to 24 and the last 2 runs downsized to 30, and that's a 3.27% savings of $8,046.64. And again, too, it will work as well. The design engineer, your public works director, have no problem with option 1 because it will work. I don't see any detriment. One of the challenges was the question, and I know Councilman Boone looked into as well, is can we get shallower? Because part of that cost is the deepness of the pipe. The problem is we got to start somewhere. We're starting at the inlet that's in the existing parking lot, which is already deep, and it has to drop down an embankment. And we have a water line and a sewer line that we can't get in conflict with, and so we're kind of, and we've got some tie-in lines that come into it, so we were limited in that. The depth really didn't have any options, but the material size could. And I am perfectly good recommending the option 1, which does reduce this change order amount to 4.6% less than what we started at, which would be a total of $235,224.70. Any questions?
I guess we ought to put that option on there. Somebody makes a motion.
Yeah, Jack is discussing if and when we vote on this in the regular council meeting, we would have to make a motion to choose, I guess, option one, because the amount would differ than what's listed in the resolution on the agenda. Okay. Well, Richard, I will say about that, whole situation, I mean, it's unfortunate to run into that kind of stuff, but it happens. And obviously, we want to fix it now instead of fix it later, especially if we're doing what we hope again. And I hate to keep using the phrase turnkey project, but if we're doing something we hope to be near perfect at the end, we want to start out the right way, and it means fixing some old issues, and we got to fix them.
And then finally, I have item number 16, and I always hate to get in these after-the-fact situations, but I do want to at least give you the background. As you know, at the request of this body and the mayor, we took in-house all of the road design and improvements at Volanta Park to support the new baseball fields. We did all the design in-house. We did all the construction, engineering, and inspection in-house. And sometimes when you do that, you have to make a good assumption. And so we specified a road build-up that in this case worked for every bit of the road but a 300-foot stretch. And we were literally facing down that famous deadline that Pat knows by the bottom of his heart of opening day of baseball. And we had right there in the flat section, right there where the entrance of the park is, from station, I think, 1,300 to 1,700, we couldn't get the base to pass proof roll. It was pumping, meaning that the material that we're going to put the asphalt on was moving. We sat down out there and had to make some decisions. The thing is, we had savings in the job at that point in time, and we were pretty confident that those savings in the job was going to cover the additional work to cure that problem. Problem is, the contractor's there, he's ready to go. So what we ended up doing is going in and having to stiffen the base material with a Portland cement mix. We added a geode grid, which is also a bridging material, and then we upped the binder and built a better road, and we got it to proof and to go. That was a decision that had to be made at that time. When all the numbers settled, we ended up overrunning the quantities on the total project by 2.2% of the total value, and it was basically in the binder asphalt that had to be put down. And I really did not have this information until all the tickets were turned in. We're doing our own CNI, so that means the contractor submits his tickets, we review them, we argue with them, we verify them, and that's when I prepared this change order to come in. And it is just a fact of when you're managing something in-house, you got to make those decisions to keep moving forward. If we weren't staring down an opening day window, we could have taken a breather on this and looked at it and come to you, but we didn't. That was the decision was made, and I'm asking forgiveness for that decision and approval of this change order. So,
Yeah, obviously, Richard, this sort of issue is frowned upon, spending and then asking. Obviously, there are exceptions to every situation, and I get the explanation. It's obviously not something we like to see a lot of, but I get that there, again, are circumstances that are outside of our control when things are going. And I didn't help in this situation. Obviously, I was pretty adamant. I wanted my baseball fields, and I wanted them ready by opening day. So I take a little heat for.
And in all confession, when we made the decision, we really thought the contract had enough in it to cover it, and the truth is it didn't.
Let me ask you, just kind of thinking down the road, how do we typically, if we get in this situation, and I guess in most situations there aren't these sort of strict deadlines that we're trying to adhere to, but I mean in a different aspect, let's say we were talking about work at the clock corner and we got to that, we knew there had been some savings, we knew there had been some sort of movement on both sides, up and down. How do we figure that out at the end without going over?
I don't know. I mean, generally, I don't like contingency dollar lines because I think that they can be taken advantage of, meaning that, you know, and in this case, everything had a quantity. This is a quantity overrun. It's not like that we added something to the project that wasn't already anticipated. It just had to add more of it to achieve the performance that was necessary. And frankly, you know, no contractor is going to warranty a road if we tell them to pave over base material that is not passing a test. So it's just it's a tough nut. I don't have an easy answer to that. You know, and again, the process that if it's time sensitive, it becomes a little more tough. And, you know, we work in an operational environment and keep the mayor informed and have to, you know, and I told the mayor, I said, I think we're covered on this. And I really believe that when the decision was made, it was based upon not, our numbers weren't as tight as we thought they were. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah. I get it. Council?
Again, in my opinion, the decision you made, even now, that was look at hindsight, because there's only two ways to fix that problem. You just open it back up, let air out, and dry out, and keep packing it as you go, and the weather will not accommodate that problem, especially with, deadline, you know, looming on. So you can't, you know, one issue to fix is time consuming, and it may work, it may not, because if you open it up and rain on it, you're probably worse off than you were. The other process is adding the additives to it, you part it back down, and you can get it done right. Actually, the water would help in that particular case, because it solidifies the Portland that's in the sand mix, and it works very well. In answer to your question, every part of the construction methods are a little different. Irregardless, you know, the decision, if you could wait, try to, you know, give it a go, and you have to find a way. In this case, it would have been a problem. Just wait, open up, hope we get some dry weather for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
If you don't, it's not gonna work at all.
Yeah, I'm I guess less interested in sort of the nuts and bolts of this particular project. I'm more thinking sort of long-term or big picture, so that we as a group, everybody in here that has these kind of projects, if it gets sort of to that end, and I know y'all do a great job of keep an eye on what the project costs and where the savings are and where our money is, but, you know, I mean, this, you know, we miscalculated it in the end here.
And again, it's also timing. This was the last bit of road work being done, so it was not like they discovered it the first of the project and could have jumped off and worked on some other things while we got through the process to get it approved. But again, and just complete honesty, even based upon the fact that we were running under on other things, I thought we had this covered. So I may have taken that, I hate to say gamble, but I really, you know, thought that we were within the quantity and dollars not to exceed the contract, and that happens not to be the case. We were ended up being over by 2.2%. So.
We definitely trust Richard, because this is not something you ask very often. So even as perfect as you are up here with being under budget by just enough every time, you're entitled to a miscalculation from time to time.
And I will tell you, I made a promise to Councilman Burrell, I think in January of 2018, that this would never happen again, and it's happened again. And I don't like reneging on my promises. So.
Jack?
I believe you covered it.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Richard. All right. Afternoon, Pat.
Hey, how is everybody?
Great, thank you.
I have item 14, spray foam installation in the back gym of the rec center, and I recognize that it's considerably over budget. I almost declined to bring it before you, but we have been trying to get this done for the last several years. I had some quotes dating back to 2021 that were all 64, 65, and 67,000. That was the reasoning for me budgeting for 70,000. And obviously we missed that mark. We did have a quote back from 2020 during COVID of $46,000. So it's considerably jumped up year after year. So that's just where we are. And I hate to bring it to you being so far over budget, but wanted to leave it in your hands, see what you want to do with it.
Well, looks like the 88,000 was significantly less than the other bid you had
That's
too.
correct,
So
yep.
that's,
What happened to the other bidders from the prior years? Were they sent
They
a package?
declined the bid.
You know, some of them are out of business now for some reason. and some of the
Right,
spray foam
and I was
companies.
hoping the three companies that we had quoted
Large job.
previously would bid, but they did not. None of the three that we had previously quoted went through the bid process.
Do you know if they're still in business? I mean, is there a chance that if we rejected the bids and rebid, that we could get some more bids, or?
We can certainly try.
Yeah. And you do run the risk of them coming back higher, too. That does happen
Yep.
for such a, percentage-wise, it's a big, big difference, but dollars-wise, it may not be worth the risk.
I'll do whatever you guys want me to do.
Kevin, Jimmy, any other?
I think I'd probably just go with it rather than taking the gamble that you go the other direction.
Why didn't we move forward with it the other times we got the bid?
This is the first time we've bid it.
Those are quotes.
Oh,
before-
yes, I'm sorry, okay.
We quoted it to see what we needed the budget for, and that's,
Thank you, Pat.
thank you.
Who's next? Afternoon.
Hello, council. Afternoon. I have item number 3, resolution, the compensation and job classification plan for a snack bar crew leader, grade of pay 5, and to defund the snack bar attendant position, grade 3, in the golf department. I've lost 2 key personnel in that position. One, Mary Ann, retired from full-time to part-time, and Erlinda Culpepper completely retired from the city. And so I would like to defund the snack bar position and put in a crew leader, which I need to help me manage the snack bar grill. The budget, as far as money and salary, really does not change, but it is a change in the position or the pay grade going from 3 to 5. But where the minimums and the maximums are, it still fits our budgetary needs. It's really not an increase, but it will help me have a manager in position to help me with the grill.
Council, any questions for Bobby on this?
I was just going to ask the mayor, you have reviewed this, you're in favor of this?
Actually, the crew leader position was already reviewed in the compensation study. It was already part of that plan anyway. It just did not make it to the budget to fund the crew leader position.
Thank you, Bobby.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, how are y'all?
Good.
Mayor? Lisa. We got 3. 2, we went over last council meeting. Number 9, Dan O'Donnell, he's our geologist. To explore plant, I know we call them wells, 1, 3, and 4, but they're actually plants, treatment plants like this treatment plant down the hill there. So 1 and 3 would be to add wells there. And number 1, we have the piping in place, the bigger piping at 14 to explore there. And also at well 3, y'all already know our plan there, the larger treatment plant's being built now. And we've added the 1 well, waiting on permitting in that from the state. We're looking at about 750 gallons a minute at this point, which is another million gallons from there. So this would be additional well site, kind of looking toward the east and possibly a little bit to the north in that area. And then well 4 was to look at the lower aquifer. We've always had a nitrogen, it's in the range of normal, but being that was a dairy and farmland, it's always close to that little bit above what we like, normal, but it's still in the normal range. And going in the lower aquifer, lower screen there, we may get some better water. So that's why that one's looked at. And number 10, or y'all have any questions on that one? Number 10 was to put ground monitoring system in at well 1, plant 1, 2, and 3, our largest plants. This would keep us ahead of the game technology-wise also, be able to keep an eye on the aquifers. If we get in any trouble, we'd know ahead of time, with any kind of dry weather, be able to see any changes happening pretty much in real time. And we have number 17, the NWPP, the Municipal Water Pollution Prevention. It's our annual report on the wastewater side. Talks about the SSOs out in collection, talks about the sludge removal, and what happens at the plant treatment-wise.
Just a question, why is this something that needs council approval for us to send a report?
It's in our permit, it's a state requirement. We have engineer look at it, they look at, pretty much Dennis answers everything, we answer all the questions, and it also looks at, how the plan is. There's a scoring system, and it needs y'all's approval if we do anything changes to it in the future, which you'll see that on the resolution part of it. Because y'all are the ones that, approve us doing any upgrades or anything.
That's right.
Okay. Council, any questions on any of that?
I mean, everything was great. We've had a reduction in SSOs, which we always like that. Doing better again this year. The plant's about 7 years in since its last upgrade. There are some, we came probably a month ago or so and did a presentation on the headworks. That's something that will have to be looked at. And then just normal maintenance. We got some filter system and some of that stuff that's getting close to the 10-year mark of doing some major maintenance on it. But that's all budgeted stuff, and we'll add in this next budget.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I don't get to spend much money in my role. So I figured I'd use this opportunity to say that we have looked at our snapshot from January 1 to May 1, and this year we have saved $97,000 for our workers' compensation. So Personnel Board was really excited about that, and I wanted to share it with y'all. And then Thursday, me and Wes are going down to Robertsdale to the Culinary Arts Building for our internship program. We've got 2 really, really good kids, and we're looking forward to having them work in the gas department.
Awesome.
I would say the 2 best kids there that interviewed with us.
I would agree with that, yeah. I think we got the best 2. We're excited about it. We've got a job description lined up for them and work lined up so that they can get kind of real hands-on on work in our department, kind of see what it looks like, take a snapshot of kind of what we do over the next couple of months and put them, in the action as much as we can put them in the action and keep them safe and let them learn what we do and kind of how we do it. So we're excited about it.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Hey, Wes, did you win yesterday? I didn't either.
14-9.
We did.
For every winner, there must be a loser.
Okay, I am here for item number 18. We have the request, we had the gentleman come to the work session and council meeting, Mr. Seeley, requesting the streets on Fairhope Avenue to close for Art Walk. So we kind of came back at him and asked him to fill out our application for streets, just to get the signatures down Fairhope Avenue. So we did get that back from him. I will say the large majority were in favor and did sign on here. We did have a few call us after the fact and tell us that they were they felt pressured to sign the petition. However, they wanted to go back and tell us that they weren't in favor. So I will say, and I believe Mayor had a couple of phone calls as well. So I would say probably a handful of those folks who signed the initial petition said that they would like to remove their name from that. So as far as that goes, I would say that overwhelmingly, they did have the majority say yes, that they would mind closing it for June. And I'll invite Shane. Oh, hey, golly. Okay. And Shane and I have spoken about this last week, and we did get their application back, and we did notice, or I will say Shane, Officer Nolte noticed about on there, they did check that they would have alcohol present on the street application, which we found odd, and electricity, so.
And y'all, that was our only concern. As far as which way y'all go with it, we're fine either way. We would want, obviously, we're gonna close Fairhope Avenue, probably put the barricades, the water barricades on both ends, just because it is a main road that may need a little more security. But the marking the alcohol concerned us because we do want them to know that obviously we can't do that. And the band stuff where they're asking for electricity to have bands in the street.
I don't think we have any provision to allow them to have alcohol.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
We do not.
We don't. And so
But we
that
didn't
would-
want them to misunderstand and think because they checked it, they could have.
just because the street was
alcohol.
closed,
Right.
that they can, yeah, I mean, I've talked to a couple of people over the last week and, you know, kind of heard a little bit of both sides of it. I think, you know, I do think as far as how we handle street closures going forward with people requesting signatures, that we do look at who the signatures are to make sure that the people signing it are the people that have the authority to make those decisions. And I'm not saying they didn't do that here, but one of the things I heard was that one of the signatures was just from somebody that worked there, not somebody that can make the decisions for that operation. Yeah, I mean, Paige, of what you're saying is that they still, even with those concerns, they still had a majority of the people on Fairhope Avenue that did want to try this closure in June. And Shane, based on what you've seen, if we do what we're talking about doing with the water barricades and making sure, obviously, they understand that they cannot have alcohol on the street, that's something that we can give a shot.
Absolutely.
The one thing we need to make sure is if they, typically they'll put a ban like on their property or on the sidewalks if they have the space, that they use their own electricity and they have to move the fire.
How will that be communicated to this group?
I will end up calling
Okay.
Mr. Seeley and just let him know that we've seen the application and that we had a few red flags to go up, and just make sure he's aware that they have not pulled any ABC permits to allow alcohol. So obviously, if he serves alcohol in his business, you have to stay inside his premises or his property.
We can do that together.
Yeah, and other than that, yeah, we can't allow, I mean, we don't have electricity on Fairhope Avenue to even give them other than the
Out- out in
110s
the
on the
tr-
trees.
yeah.
So we don't, I mean,
All right. Guys, any other questions on this?
Yeah, it's good information there, Paige, because I had mixed bag, and you know, the gentleman that came before us last time, he did say everyone had signed it. It was his words, everyone.
That's right.
Which was surprising, and we did hear from several people, and then I think some people had some strong arguments more than others. I mean, the person that said they weren't going to stay open, well, nobody's forcing them to stay open. I don't think that the Fairhope Avenue merchants can say you have to be open and you have to have entertainment, or you even have to pitch in to pay for anything. I think that's kind of for the people that want to do that, but that doesn't have anything to do with this governing body. So, I did have a really a strong no today from the restaurant owner. Bone and Barrel, just tell you that. We were told that all the restaurants were in favor of closing. I had heard mixed. I called the owner and he said, no, but his concerns, and there's some valid concerns, is there's a lot of work. If you're on the alleyway, there's a lot of work going on the alleyway, so it's hard to get to your business.
Right.
And so and if they close Fairhope Avenue, at least for vehicular traffic, it may hurt you, but my thought was also it might force people to walk down that street that don't walk down that street very often. They may discover something that they didn't know was there. But I don't want to tell the business owner that because he probably knows it a little better than I do, since he's there every day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not convinced that this is a great idea long-term. I mean, I think
was willing to
anything's-
give it a shot.
Yeah, that's kind of my
new.
thought is, it's
And-
worth seeing.
And I think that's kind of what our guidance needs to be, is like, how long would y'all like for us to give this a go? Is this like a month-to-month
Yeah.
thing?
See how it goes.
I think a month, and then let's see where we are. I mean, if it's sort of a traffic disaster, and that's really my biggest concern is, again, and I know that there was some discussion of Delamar being closed, but, Delamar's a one-way, and it's not the main thoroughfare through downtown, which Fairhope Avenue is. I know there's obviously ways to get around it, but
It will
that's.
be on that Friday night.
I mean, so, my thought is, let's take it 1 month at a time. Let's see if it ends up working out great, and if it does, then we can consider doing it again. If it doesn't, then we gave it a shot, and
I
didn't
worry
take.
that 1 month, it may not be enough to work the kinks out, because we
Yeah,
didn't
well,
do it
that's-
the first time. I'd say a couple, but that's just.
Let's see what the
play it
kinks
by
are,
ear.
I
If it's
guess.
a
And
disaster,
yeah,
then-
and I guess that's what, I mean,
Let's
let's
just
see
say
what-
we have the courage to reverse that.
Yeah. Absent some circumstance that causes us to revisit it sooner. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't have any problem with that.
I mean, and something else, we also spoke about was, maybe we look at also, if Delamar is becoming a little bit of an issue, or other merchants are having a problem with it being closed, maybe we look at opening it back up.
Yeah.
And letting all streets be open.
Yeah, no,
also-
I think that's fine too.
And Shane and I have talked, and maybe getting those officers on foot to kind of just keep an open eye and see what's going on, and see if the traffic's really picked up over on Delamar. Because like I've spoken to, we have a lot going on downtown in general, not just Art Walk. So I think that maybe the crowds have slowed down a little bit at Art Walk, not that we want them to, but I don't know that it's a huge safety concern as it once was.
No, and two, I told them I'm probably gonna come out that Friday night too and help them, because we are gonna have to add a couple officers. That way we can close both ends of that street like we do Delamar, and keep a car and officers there. So I'm gonna come out and help them. We'll look at it and see what's what. How many cars we have to tow, just kind of see.
I think you're right. There's a lot more competing events just all year round now.
I also see it with, we make it work for Arts and Crafts Festival with many streets closed, and it works, somehow it works. And people get around it, and that's, 10 times the number, but 50 times the number of people in a night or a day.
It's true.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right.
I got one more over here.
Yep.
The next item, which is White Linen Night over at the Arts Center.
Yes, sir.
They were asking about closing Oak Street. That's something they generally do. They've done the last few years. And I think they decided kind of late this year that they wanted to, because of some things that got added. They already have 2 officers. It'll be easy to close it, and I don't see a problem with it.
Perfect. Council, any? Thank you, Shane. All right, anybody else? Richard?
Just in case there's a little time left, this is not agenda related, but kind of brief you and let y'all, as Jason would say, marinate on it for 2 weeks.
Thank you, sir.
And we can bring it up next. I will start this out by saying that Public Works is probably very consistent in our inconsistency with enforcement of drop-off at our landfill. And the mayor asked us to get it boiled down, make it simple, make it easy, and so that everyone can understand it. And so what we're proposing is just trying to simplify the rules of the road for our citizens to enjoy and use our landfill drop-off. Nothing has changed in the hours of operation. That's the same. The accepted solid waste, we still accept construction debris, junk items, green waste. Biggest thing is we had, if you've ever read the sign, it's kind of like Willy Wonka's contract. You got to take a magnifying glass up to it and find out where all the rules, and it's really a useless sign. It has too many words and too many references to ordinances and things of that nature. But our biggest challenge is volumetric. We, by law in our ordinance, says we cannot accept commercial waste brought to the landfill. So our internal policy was adopted no tandem axle trailers. So if Mr. Robinson showed up with his tandem axle trailer with one bag of lawn clippings on it, he'd be turned away. But if Mr. Burrell showed up in his single axle trailer that was piled 12 feet high with materials, he would be allowed in. That doesn't make sense or logic. And so we sat down and said, what is, and just so you know, our permitted volume, I don't know where 257 cubic yard maximum per day came from. That's what our permit says. And we started looking at how many average folks attend. If they brought the maximum amount, where would that stay within our limits of permit, including that we're picking up at street sides. And 2.5 cubic yards, which is, may sound odd to you, but what does 2.5 cubic yards look like? The easiest example is if you have an 8-foot pickup bed that is full to the top of the bed, that almost calculates to the exact amount of 2.5 cubic yards, okay? Or if you had 30 of those, or 12 of those 30-gallon trash bags absolutely full to the mount, that almost equals 2.5 cubic yards. Or if you had a brush pile that was roughly 6 foot by 6 foot by 2 foot high, that almost calculates to 2.5 cubic yards. So that's what we want to set the maximum volume per day per customers. And frankly, with being open 6 days a week, that means a citizen with a sticker can bring us 15 cubic yards a week if they wanted to. And what does 15 cubic yards look like? Our medium-sized dump truck has a 16-yard body on it, so that's almost a dump truck load of C&D or junk or green waste. The other thing that's probably the biggest change right now with tires. They come to City Hall, they pay a tire fee, they bring us a tire, then we load it up, take it to Magnolia, pay them the same fee, and the process is complete. We'd like to get out of that business. It makes no sense. First of all, every one of us, when you go buy new tires, you pay a recycled tire fee, and that vendor who sold you new tires has to take your old tires and properly dispose of them. So really, we should have gotten to the point in time where there shouldn't be tires, and the most recent example, somebody came and paid $5 for a tire and then brought us a tractor tire that was about 7 foot in diameter that was going to cost us $120 to dispose of, and we told City Hall to give them their money back and let them take their tire. We just need to get out of that business. If you got a tire, every citizen is a citizen that lives here is a citizen of Baldwin County, and they can go down to Magnolia and pay the appropriate disposal fee for that tire based on its size and what it takes for it to be properly disposed of. Nothing's changed with our disallowed items. We can't take treated lumber, wire, chain link fencing. Again, our ordinance says no commercial debris. That's a tough one. But when we look at a content, usually it's a pretty good indication that wasn't produced by a homeowner doing a do-it-yourself project at their home. And that's always a tough one. And of course, hazardous waste we can't deal with. The other thing is we still take household hazardous waste, which consists of paint, electronics, household chemicals, old herbicides, insecticides, motor oil, and things of that nature. And what we would like to do is set the first Saturday of February, May, August, and November as the drop-off day for that, including paints, with a limit on paints, 5 gallons per drop-off per quarter, which is 20 gallons per year per customer. So I just can't imagine anybody having more than 20 gallons of paint stored in their house, because here's the challenge. as it's dropped off continuously, we have the chain of custody requirements. We have to maintain that until we have a large enough load to go and then get it and pay to properly dispose of that. We pay a cost to the landfill to take that material. If we can have one day a quarter where they bring it to us, that following Monday, we can palletize all that and get it disposed of, and we're only doing that 4 times a year opposed to just almost constantly. And finally, this has always been a rule, but this is a problem, and this applies to city employees as well. No rummaging or pilfering through the city waste, because there's a liability there. And folks, we have some that's the highlight of their day is to go dig through the junk pile. But we're trying to be strict on that, and because somebody could get hurt, and ultimately that'd be on us. So we did have an example of a sign that we want to replace the one that has 20,000 words on it, and hopefully make it simple for our customers. And I'd love you to think on this for 2 weeks, and we're going to bring this back up at work session in 2 weeks and get your input if you'd like to see anything else. But we're just trying to make it understandable to the user as well as us to be able to consistently enforce the use of the landfill. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you,
Got
Richard.
a question, just looking at what I call a construction type of landfill. So looking at your estimates, potentially 7 to 10 years, I'm going to guess, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
do we want to, whenever that time comes, do we want to just be out of the landfill business, or is that something we need to think about, having a construction disposal site for future?
Well, I will tell you that at the rate of growth that we're seeing in our city, I think we're going to occupy and use up the majority of the airspace that we have remaining. Our permit is good through 2030. And there may be an opportunity to extend and renew that permit for whatever volume is left there. But I will tell you, the chances of us ever getting a C&D landfill permitted within our territory is probably slim to none. Those days are kind of over. So when that landfill gets to close out state, we're out of that business, meaning that everything we collect at curbside is going to a permitted landfill operated by the county or some other entity, that whichever is the best value and location for us at that time. Right now, the county has McBride, which is a permitted C&D facility, and of course you have Magnolia, which is the line landfill as well for things like pressure treated and things of that nature. So I do think that's in our future. It is, if you extrapolate, if we start hitting our maximum in landfill, I could see that we will consume up the vast majority of our remaining volumetric space within our landfill by the time that permit comes up for renewal. It's just, it's exponential. I mean, we're growing. And you got to remember, we're landfilling. Now, understand, the good news is the only thing going in our permitted landfill is C&D and junk that can't be recycled. All of our veg is going further back to the east and some of those old borrow pits and things of that nature. And literally, there is no closeout permitting or whatever, but eventually it fills up to the point where there's no, you just can't go any higher or anything of that nature. So that's going to be part of a city council and mayor administration of the future to look at, how that transition goes. But it's not an infinite resource. It's very finite and it's predefined. We're probably got about 18 vertical feet left, but the good news is when we went through the permitting process, we did, if you recall, had to go through some iterations, and the good news is we have a little bit more room to the south than we were actually using, so that's what we're doing now. Our concentration is the working face, is the south face, and I think it's Bell Road or whatever the name of that little road that kind of divides the old historic landfill and ours. We can, the toe of our landfill can be within 30 feet of that road, and we're we've got some space there, so we're trying to maximize it, but it is a finite resource, but that is our future. I don't, hard to project, so.
I had one comment on Council President. on the household hazardous waste, on the paint, one Saturday per quarter, that seems pretty restrictive. If you clean out your garage and, you know, you're the day after for the first Saturday of the quarter, you have to wait 3 months to take it to the landfill. That's not very convenient for somebody that's paying, you know, we're paying, our garbage rates have gone up, and, I don't know, maybe bi-monthly. So we're going from you can do it any day you want till 4 days a year. That just seems, well, any day but Sunday. It just seems pretty restrictive. As somebody that actually takes advantage of that, I guess maybe I'm thinking of my own situation. It just sometimes, and you know, if you have to be out of town that Saturday because your son's got a ball game, then you got to wait 6 months to take your paint down there. It just seems restrictive.
Okay. All right,
Just think about it. I mean, maybe you have a reason it's that restrictive, but I'd like to know what the reason is why it's that terribly restrictive.
It's the chain of custody is one of those things that we have to have, and we got to track what, you know, how we collected, how much it was, and you know, we got to maintain that final bill of lading when it goes across the scales, and we pay and get the invoice from Magnolia if that's where it ends up, that type of thing. It's just it's a whole separate act, you know. It is, so you have to handle those materials in that way. And yes, it is a recommendation for a little bit more convenience of our operation, and that may be a selfish point of view and that we need to look at, so.
Well, and also I thought about, I don't know if it would happen, I don't know if it'd be a rush on the just, you know, the drop-off point that day, but if it gets to be you only have, instead of 300 days a year, 4 days a year, I don't know.
I believe my advocacy was the first Saturday or the second Saturday of every month, and well, you have it 12 times a year, and I didn't think that was too restrictive. And my guys politicked me pretty hard to go to quarterly, so we can
We'll
always
go to court on your side on that one.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll definitely look at that. Okay, and we'll talk about it next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank y'all. All right, we'll adjourn the work session and come back for the regular council meeting at around 6.